Okay, and reminding members of the board, this isn't an action step that we're taking, we're just sharing and gathering additional information. Mr. Hall.
I'm curious, I've got a question for either Wayne or for you, Dr. Pilch. Did GEA offer any solution or insight on where they thought we could get the money?
No, it's my understanding they did not. And in fact, I have mentioned that, and I think they have a desire to do that work in the future when we approach negotiations in a different way. But at this point, they have not offered up suggestions for us in terms of how we might fund this. Do you have any additional information, Mr. Eads?
No, I think that's correct. I did not. There was no suggestion on what we might cut. As you probably know, our budget is all people, and cutting the budget means cutting people who are already at work providing services to students in various ways. So we did not hear any suggestions on that. I think what we might have heard is that we knew that the 3.75% step was there, and why didn't we plan for it? And I think this is a situation where we hit that resource wall. I think we did the math in our February work session, and at 3.75% plus a 0.5% for horizontal advancement, plus a 0.8% for para, not even counting increases in medical dental benefits, which are still fully paid and free for our employees. That's over 5% new money every year just to do those things. We've been getting we got 2.8% this year, and inflation has been about that or less for quite some time, and I expect next year with the energy prices, inflation may be lower. So it makes me very concerned that we have a situation where people believe, even though the contract itself in state law makes all financials automatic openers year to year, that we have a situation where we have to have more money than we know we're going to get to keep the current salary schedule alive and to continue to provide benefits, horizontal advancement, and the para cost increase every year. So this is a situation where the math just doesn't work. And inflation is the new money that we've been getting. So we're up against a pretty hard spot that's likely to repeat itself until we, as Dr. Pilch suggested, find a new way to do this part of our business.
Well, and if I recall, in that same meeting and several others, we as a board made a conscious decision that we were no longer going to spend into reserves. Right. And that was a hard line decision, or not a hard line, but a hard decision. It was a decision that we are not going to back up from, because you go to the well or you go to the savings account often every year, and there's no savings account there. And to my recollection, and again, I need you to refresh me, it seemed to me that at that time anyway, our reserves were less than 1 month's salaries.
That would be correct.
Okay. Other comments? Dr. Richard, please.
A question. With the 3 additional contracted SLPs, how are we doing on staffing right now for the special service providers?
You know, that's a day-to-day fluctuating number. The last time I looked, we had 8, and I don't know if, what do we have right now for SSP openings? Can anybody tell me?
We're down to 3.
With these, I think we're at, say it again?
3 school psychologists.
3 school psychologists is where we're at right now. Still open.
needed?
Yeah, still needed, so.
And
one additional SLP, so that's 4 positions we have not been able to fill yet.
So we might anticipate seeing 4 more of these contracted positions?
Yes, you might. And the psychologist position, I believe last year through contractors, cost a little over $100,000 for each position, hiring them through contractors. I'd also comment that on the administrative, professional, and technical schedule, these are exempt employees. They work 204 days. They work 8-hour plus days because they're exempt. The contractor SSPs are limited to 7.5 hours, and they only work on student contact days, 174 student contact days. So to be fair, comparing apples to apples, we get significantly more productivity when we hire on the administrative, professional, and technical schedule. I'd also, go ahead, you have another?
No,
okay.
That's, yeah.
I'd also like to make one comment about something that Dr. Pilch said about that we went in with a 2% offer because we knew that's what we could afford. Traditional labor management bargaining, both sides go in keeping their positions secret, and you negotiate back and forth, and you bring up, I found another 2% or 0.2%. With the recent transparency laws passed, and with Proposition 104, as a practical matter, for us to negotiate that way, we'd have to go in secretly. Wait, we can't do that. We're a totally transparent governmental institution, so we can't actually negotiate that way anymore. So I think it really does make the ground fertile for a new way to do business. The traditional bargaining, hard-fought bargaining, we found another 0.1%, and it's just not a practical way to do things when we have total transparency required by law, and all negotiation discussions happen in public as also required by law. So I just think that in the last few years, the scenery has changed, and we have to think of a better way to do that. And I know from conversations that Dr. Pilch is very serious about creating a new way to do this, because the old way is getting us to this point, which is really not a lot of fun for any of us.
Mr. Richards.
I appreciate all the work by both teams in trying to get to this. I know that there's been a lot of hours put in. I think it gets to the point that, it really is the issue. I can understand the GES perspective that it's hard when there's an expectation of the 3.75, and that's, in the proposed salary schedule in the contract, it's really challenging to get that up, and I can understand that that's, if you're ever negotiations, giving up any ground like that is really challenging. The flip side of that is that we'd love to meet that number. I would love to say, let's go for it. It's just the challenge is that our funding source and our funding mechanism doesn't allow for it. And I think that's something has to give at that point. I think that a fresh start earlier on in the year and working toward getting to a sustainable schedule, I think will make whatever happens, to come to a resolution this year will give us light at the end of the tunnel if we can start negotiating earlier on and working our way through studying the salary schedule and seeing how we can make it sustainable with our current funding model. I can see light in the tunnel, though there is pain now, I guess, through that method. I appreciate the work.
Thank you. Other board comments, board members? Mr. Lydiak.
Again, to echo what Mr. Richardson was saying, I wish the funds were there. I've been part of boards where, we've chosen to dip into the savings account, and we did that in good faith and hope that the state funding would improve and that it would significantly improve so that we could meet those goals and expectations. And that 3.75 is a hope and always a goal, but, we put forth a good faith offer and the best of our ability, and I respect our board's decision not to dip into savings. And I definitely can't see cutting any programs. I mean, we're doing the best we can with the resources we have, so thank you.
Dr. Richard.
I'd have to echo the same things. It's that challenge of living within your budget. And at this point, we know that our budget is that 2.8 that we've received. And we do need to take a look at what's sustainable as well, not just for this budget, but for the next one. We did agree quite clearly that moving into using more of the reserves was just something that wasn't fiscally responsible, and so we did have long and serious discussions about setting a limit to that. I have trouble looking at where we would have to cut and the impact that would have on teachers, the support that we want to provide them related to assessments, instructional materials, the vertical teaming that has helped us to do that continuous improvement as a district. Those are significant things that would have high impact, and so that 2% is, I think, our best offer.
Mr. Hall.
I would add one other thing and echo your statement. We have to make it sustainable for the predictability for the teacher's sake, for the employees, so that they have some understanding and it's not just whatever happens each year. But to go year to year, as we're going now, is just craziness. Whatever the economy does, if we have more money, it's transparent. Everybody's going to know we have more money if everything picks up. You know, it's not like we can hide it. Not like we would, period. But we also have to really do what's best for the kids. And some of these programs, I don't see where we can cut those programs. I guess we can. But is it in the best interest of the children? And is it in the best interest of the district? We have to find a new way. We have to be innovative. We have to sit and talk, and we have to come with a different conversation completely, and be willing to look at new things, as Dr. Pilch has said, and as you've echoed, Wayne. And so, for the good of the teachers too, we need to do that, and all employees, because this serves no one. This exercise serves no one.
If I may, I am a board member who voted in favor of dipping into reserve with the intent of demonstrating as a board that we're supportive of teachers and their salaries. Subsequent to that, we realized we had a fiscal impact, actually, our credit rating. And we began to look at that as a one-time step that subsequent use of our reserve would put us further into jeopardy, which our economics as a district is solid. We watch our pennies. Dipping back into that reserve was simply foolhardy now that we understand the impact. But I think the purpose of that was to demonstrate an intent to support teachers and to do the best we can with a salary structure, if you will, that we'd inherited. This is not the first time that our district has had difficulty meeting the lines on that salary schedule. Other boards have not been able to meet that. Other boards have frozen salaries under certain circumstances. Other boards have chosen to say, trust us, sometime in the future another board might be able to meet this obligation. And personally, I don't think this board should do those things. Mr. Eager, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a release of a couple of wonderful school buses that had served a little bit of time for the district just recently, closing in on 300,000 miles.
27 and over 30 years, I think so.
I don't know of another district in the state who would be proud of saying we keep our buses until they're unsustainable. The kinds of decisions that boards have made preclude us from making a replacement in buses, making a replacement of temporary classrooms, making a step toward a replacing of a building. Our staff work really well with what they have, but much of the materials they have not been updated for a number of years because our focus has been on salary. This is not a board that is anti-teacher or anti-salary. It's a board that's facing what we said in February. It was a critical feature to get a relationship with our teachers that is able to go forward. And that salary structure is not that sort of structure. So I think my thoughts about this is that we sought from the very beginning, very clearly, to say, get a hold of this salary structure so that we can sustain it and be proud of it, guarantee that our employees make a living wage and can move forward with their lives. We also clearly identify the SSP situation as untenable. And we aren't speaking at this moment about hard-to-fill positions, but that was a worry as well. I am disappointed in our system. I'm disappointed that we were unable to turn the corner on those three critical factors that we all looked at one another at this table and said, these are essential for us going into the next year. And I agree with my colleagues that cutting services to teachers in the classroom is very short-sighted. After you, Mr. Eads, and I wandered through the district, including classroom teachers and support staff, and heard them express some of their concerns, and an effort to make sure that we reached an understanding and try to affect some of those concerns. It seems short-sighted indeed to then start cutting some of those programs that we believe are supporting our staff. So it concerns me a great deal that we're at this position, and I look to Dr. Pilch and her team as they start saying, all right, this is not working, and we're going to work together with our teachers to make something that does work in the future. This decision is going to be a tough one for us, but I agree that light it may well be at the end of the tunnel. Mr. Hiflin.
Without being redundant, first of all, I want to thank all the people in GEA for their hard work negotiating on behalf of all the educators, and you and your team as well. I've been around the district probably in 10 or 12 buildings, and I've probably spoken to over 100 educators, and they're incredibly positive about what is occurring. And I worry that we continue to be reactive with both groups as opposed to being proactive. And I implore both sides, to reevaluate how they're working with one another. Because what needs to occur is we need to have a mill levy override or a bond issue in the future. And that's the only way we can be proactive and assist the infrastructure as well as help all of our educators meet the financial requests that they have. And if it doesn't occur, and the culture is dashed that has been worked so diligently by our administrative team and Dr. Pilch, then we have bigger concerns or issues. And I ask both sides to reevaluate what they're doing, come to the table, agree with one another, and then allow Dr. Pilch and everybody else involved to work on changing how things have been done in the past.
Thank you. Comments further? Guess I'll turn this back over to you both. Thank you for the update. I don't feel a surge of support for the notion of cutting at this time, but we'll keep our ears to you for
Thank you
further
for your
report.
comments.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Eads,
Eads.
thank you.
If I may, Mr. DeWitt, the Denver Post ran an article this morning, I believe it was, around the school funding issues in the state of Colorado. And as Denver Senator Michael Johnston stated in that article, Colorado never recovered after the recession. The needs have continued to increase across Colorado, and our funding hasn't matched that. And that's part of what we're up against here. And we look to our legislators to continue to work for a solution to appropriately fund schools in Colorado. And in the meantime, we've got some internal work to do to be certain that we can take care of our staff as well as our students and our buildings and other equipment. So thank you.
Thank you. The next item is a resolution involving John Evans Tree Nursery property. It is an action item, and we have a motion if someone would present that at this time.
I move that the Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 approve the resolution declaring that the John Evans Tree Nursery property does not have an educational purpose and is not likely to be needed in the foreseeable future.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Dr. Pilch?
So what you have before you is, by state law, we are required that if we deem as district administration or as a Board of Education that we have a site or a facility that does not any longer serve an educational purpose, that the board must approve a resolution prior to our disposing of or selling that property. And so the property we're talking about this evening is 2.7 acres. It's a parcel of land adjacent to the previous John Evans Middle School, current John Evans Middle School with no students in it. And it's the parcel property referred to as the tree nursery. And we don't foresee that that will have a future educational purpose for District 6. And we would like the ability to consider selling that property. And so we come forward tonight asking you to consider the resolution that would allow us to begin to pursue that possibility. We would, of course, come back to you for approval prior to any complete sale.
I don't know if the board would love to hear my voice reading through this resolution at this time, but it is required, I believe, to be read. So if you can be patient with me, I will read through the resolution at this time. This is a short one compared to some.
40 pages.
And there's not much money attached to it, so I know I'm lucky. So, resolution of the Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 approving the sale of the John Evans Tree Nursery property. Whereas the Weld County School District 6 Board of Education is authorized by Colorado Revised Statute 22-32-110 LE to sell and convey district property which may not be needed within the foreseeable future upon such terms and conditions as it may approve. And whereas the Weld County School District 6 Board of Education finds that the property known as the John Evans Tree Nursery is not needed and will not be needed in the foreseeable future for any purpose authorized by law, and whereas the Weld County School District 6 Board of Education wishes to sell the 2.7 acre parcel of land known as the John Evans Tree Nursery and place the proceeds of such sale into the Capital Projects Fund as required by Colorado Revised Statute 22-45-112L. Now therefore be it resolved that the Weld County School District 6 Board of Education has determined that the district property known as the John Evans Tree Nursery is not needed within the foreseeable future for any purpose authorized by law, and be it further resolved that the board president is authorized to enter into a contract for sale of the John Evans Tree Nursery property subject to final approval of the board at a sales price to be determined by using a comparative market analysis. And be it further resolved that the proceeds of the sale of the John Evans Tree Nursery shall be deposited in the Capital Projects Fund of the district with my signature upon your approval. Questions or comments at this time? We had an opportunity to discuss this a little bit earlier in executive session. Mr. Richardson.
So a quick question about, in the language in the resolution, it talks about kind of the process by which a sale could take place. Is that, are we sure that, there may be some discussion around a request for proposal or an RFQ or some sort of disposition through a competitive bid? Would this prohibit that? Because it kind of talks about a sale through a comparative market analysis to determine the value as opposed to a competitive sale process. Would this prohibit us from doing anything under that, or is this just, or am I reading too far into it?
I think it would not prohibit you from doing it that way. I think it's, if you look at that first paragraph, upon such terms and conditions as it may approve. So I think a comparative market analysis is appropriately a part of that process to be sure that we have established a reasonable price. But I think if the board wishes to have other things considered, like the use of the project, and they're after all going to be neighbors to a school site, that would be something we would definitely be able to do under this resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments at this time? So it has been moved and seconded that we accept this resolution for the John Evans Tree Nursery property. And we've had a discussion about that, nothing further. Roll call, Ms. Bria.
Mr. DeWitt?
Aye.
Mr. Haefele?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Lydiak?
Aye.
Dr. Richard?
Aye.
Mr. Richardson?
Aye.
And the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. Well, that's it for this evening. This represents the planned agenda for the board meeting, and thank you very much for your participation. This meeting is adjourned.